Welcome to LCX Insights Live. It's May 2nd, and I'm very excited to welcome you all to this special session. So today, in this live video show, I'm engaging with world's top blockchain projects, entrepreneurs, investors, and pioneers in crypto and blockchain in honest conversation meant to challenge traditional way of thinking. So my name is Monty Metzger, and I'm CEO and founder of LCX. LCX is a regulated fintech company that is focusing on digital asset trading, compliant token offerings, and tokenization. LCX has received 8 blockchain-related approvals by the Liechtenstein regulator, more than any other company in the country. And Liechtenstein is a country next to Switzerland and Austria in the middle of Europe, and has received a AAA rating from Standard & Poor's. That's the highest country rating you can get. Liechtenstein has introduced the most forward-thinking legal framework for cryptocurrencies and blockchain companies, and is providing a legal framework for legal clarity and security for our users. So what's up with LCX in the last couple of days? We did announce the listing of Celsius Networks CEL token. The first trading pairs will start tomorrow, and then Tuesday, the second one. We did announce the integration of the Celo blockchain, and we've launched 2 trading pairs with the utility token Celo. And we saw a big growth in trading volume at LCX Exchange in recent days. This is not only due to our trading competition, but even more due to our new partner to improve market making at our exchange. And of course, to all your trading activities. That's great to see. As you know, we, as a regulated platform, we don't engage in any wash trading. The only thing which we are doing is providing market opportunities for you to trade. And we are improving that step by step as we grow. At LCX Exchange, we also announced the crypto trading competition. So your chance to win a Rolex will go. And we made it very easy to everybody to join. Today is the last day that you can join, so don't waste time and sign up now. At LCX Insights Live, we're inviting leading personalities, key partners of LCX, and founders or senior management of blockchain projects listed at LCX Exchange. So today's guest is from one of the fastest growing blockchain projects in the market, called Holo. We are recently announced the listing of Holo and Holochain's utility token HOT. So HOT token currently ranks at place 54 on CoinGecko, and at LCX Exchange we offer 2 trading pairs. So there's HOT LCX and HOT BTC as a trading pair. Holo does to cloud computing what Airbnb did to hotels, and so much more. Holo is helping to grow a more human internet, where you can own your personal data and choose how your applications work. With Holo, you can share your computer space capacity to others, connect peer-to-peer apps. So Holo hosting platform lets you run web apps in a fully distributed manner on potentially thousands of nodes all around the world with no single point of failure and no central control over data. Our today's guest has 20 years of experience, or more than 20 years of experience in tech as a product lead, founder, and executive. She has deep background in web applications, innovation, telecommunications, and networking. She is mentor and advisor to many tech startups. She is a social scientist by education with a strong focus on making technology accessible by humans. So she is executive director and CEO of Holo. Please welcome Mrs. Mary Camacho. Welcome, Mary.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me, Monty. It's a pleasure to be here on LCX Insights.
Yes, yeah, we are super excited to have you here, especially as your community is so active at our platform and also all over Twitter. And we'd like to keep that very engaging here with our session. I've prepared a couple of questions from my side, but we also want the community to engage, so they can all comment on Facebook, on YouTube, or on LinkedIn, and we can get the questions right in here. I will pick a couple of ones. Then next to me, there is a prize for the best question. So we have these nice flip-flops as summer is coming, and LCX has branded flip-flops. So I'm giving one pair away to the best question of today. So don't be lazy on your couch. Get up and ask us some questions. So Mary, I tried to summarize it already a little bit, but maybe can you do this again? What is Holo and what is Holochain?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people get those two confused, so I'm really glad you brought that up. So Holo is the company that has the currency that is hot, that has the token that's on your exchange. So let's just start there. So that's really important to understand because Holochain is the protocol, and Holochain is the peer-to-peer application framework that allows us to write applications, peer-to-peer, completely peer-to-peer applications. But then what we see is that the world is somewhat ready for peer-to-peer applications. Yes, there's a big push for distributed, but not all the human beings out there are quite ready for peer-to-peer. And we've seen that because adoption has been only in certain areas or in certain spaces. So Holochain being a framework for general web, we also wanted to make sure there was a bridge for those general web applications, those peer-to-peer collaboration applications, sharing doc creation, something like Google Docs. You said the Airbnb of cloud hosting. Well, you could also build Airbnb type platforms on Holochain that are completely peer-to-peer. But if you want to reach users today, then you need to also make sure that there's a bridge to where they are on the current version of the internet. And so Holo allows you to host a completely peer-to-peer application on Holo, which is a distributed cloud network, and you pay hosts all around the world so that your friends, your grandmother, someone who's not necessarily up for using peer-to-peer apps can reach it the same way that they reach any other application in a browser.
That sounds exciting. So
We think so.
when you look at the platform right now, like what are the latest numbers in terms of growth and reach, and can you mention something which is public?
Well, sure. Well, first of all, we're in our alpha test, so we're in a pre-release phase right now. So the numbers are not quite the same as they might be later, but there's some really good ones. One of the things I said just a second ago was about adoption, and we see that adoption is this key for all new technologies. And what's really fascinating is that for a pre-release new technology, we've got over 1,000 developers who have already been engaging with Holochain and building on Holochain. Actually, it's probably way more than that. We don't actually have some of the metrics because we didn't have all of our metrics in place at the beginning. But what I can say is that over 450 developers have forked the repo, and we know many, many, many more have downloaded or installed the binaries and actually been building on Holochain. But I think one of the more interesting ones that happened recently was we've ordered some more Holoports, and we opened up our store, and in just a few hours, we sold out 500 Holoports. So that was pretty exciting. So thank you to all of our community and folks. We had, I think we had something like 8,000 people asking for information about this. So it was pretty exciting.
Wow, yeah, amazing. And I mean, it's all about reinventing cloud computing. You know, that the title of our show now is also called How Decentralized Storage Will Reinvent Cloud Computing. What's your view on this?
Well, the thing is I think it's more than just storage, right? Storage is one piece of cloud computing, and it's an important piece. So with Holo, we do storage and compute. So everybody out on our network that has a Holoport or has the Holoport software installed will be a host. They will be providing, it's kind of like a lot of folks think of it like akin to mining, right? But we don't do mining with Holofuel. Holofuel is the eventual internal currency for the network, the real utility currency. And so instead of doing mining, you literally just host, because we don't need to have a currency related to the protocol. Our currency is to facilitate millions of micro transactions to pay hosts for hosting services on the network. And that's for the compute, the storage, the bandwidth, all the things that it takes really to provide that distributed cloud service out into to the world. And we think that that is competitive now with all the centralized computing models, because before, blockchain's great, does its thing, but it has a few limitations, and one of them is efficiency, and another one is speed. And I know there's all these variations, and I'm not going to get into talking about all the different protocols on blockchain. That's actually not my specialty. I'm going to stick with Holochain and Holo.
Yeah.
But the thing is they to a large degree, there's an energy and efficiency, and then there's a speed issue. The speed for Holochain is thousands, tens of thousands of times, if not hundreds of thousands of times faster than any blockchain out there. We currently have peer-to-peer chat app running on Holochain that gives you the same experience you have with any typical chat app over the internet today. And that's on a platform or on a framework that is also comparable to blockchain, in the sense that it's got the immutable data, in the sense that you've got a DHT, where you've got a hash table that has every single record of every single transaction, in this case, message that's going across the network. So we think that's pretty exciting, and it changes a lot of what's possible in the space of compute and of cloud hosting, especially.
Yes, it feels like we are at a tipping point, a turning point of the industry, because the first decade was all about Bitcoin and like getting an understanding of what we can do. And now there are companies like you who are really driving applications. So, I mean, we've seen some peaks and ups and downs of Bitcoin, but where do you see, where would you stand with distributed ledger technology and the future of kind of distributed cloud computing?
I don't even think we've scratched the surface. I mean, honestly, you can say Bitcoin's been around for years. Well, lots of the other tech that we're building on top of have been around for years too. But that doesn't mean that it's the same as when things come together. And I think what we've seen in the last 3 years or so has been really an increase of innovation in the space that is distributed technology and distributed compute. And this is important, because this transforms the internet, right? We saw kind of a version of the internet, and we've heard of Web 1, Web 2, these sorts of things, and that. But if you go back to the 90s, late 90s, when the internet was really coming into play, and the companies really started being able to provide new services, there was a massive growth, and then there was quite a bit of a drop, right? Just after that, in the early 2000s. And that made sense, because there was a lot of excitement, and these are the ups and downs of innovation. There was a lot of excitement, there was a lot of money flowing in, but everybody hadn't quite figured out what the business propositions were. Well, it took 15 years for some of those business propositions to really come into their heyday. And I think there's been innovation after innovation after innovation over that period of time. And we're just at the front end of seeing some of those innovations. Some of them that are here right now, they'll last, and some of them won't. And then many, many new ones will come into the field. So I'm very excited. I think we're one of the ones that's setting ourselves up to be here to stay. I think we're setting ourselves up to be one of the ones that sets a foundation for many others.
Okay, setting the foundation, I think, is a good topic to talk about as well, because you set your foundation as a regulated entity in Gibraltar, and that's another small country in Europe. I think had been very innovative in terms of regulatory framework. But why is it important for Holo and Holochain at all?
Well, we also, I heard you talking about Liechtenstein when you were doing the intro for LCX. It really is important to understand the regulatory world for those of us who are in the DLT space. There's a lot of risk involved in any business, right, when you're a startup. But in this area, especially where it's so innovative and you have a lot of jurisdictions kind of making up the rules as they go along and deciding something's good or bad or should work a certain way. Sometimes they make really bad regulatory decisions, or just decisions get made in a court or by a group of folks and policymakers. Gibraltar, like Liechtenstein, got into this early. They're small, they're agile, they're able to innovate, and they really did. And they did something different than even what Liechtenstein did, and something that we found necessary because we're not an exchange. We are not a typical DLT organization. We don't have custody of anybody's uh, accounts, and so we're not a custody holding entity, which is a lot of what they're trying to regulate for. But we do have distributed ledger technology, and we do have a point where that distributed ledger technology touches the current financial world. And that's what's important to them. So what was great about Gibraltar is that their regulatory environment is very much a principles first regulatory setup. And so they're looking at us as a startup. They're looking at how we do business. And we're going through that process with them where they can ask questions. And we chose them specifically because of that flexibility. So it's really something we wanted from a risk management perspective, because like I said earlier, Holo is the bridge from the decentralized to the more centralized internet. And so that centralized internet, that centralized world, it comes with the connections to fiat, it comes to connections with banks and all of those other types of institutions. And there you have to make sure you're doing it right and that you don't run the risk of somebody changing the rules on you when you're halfway through. So it's been a good, so far so good. It's been a good choice for us. We're happy we did our ICO out of here, out of Gibraltar, back in 2018, and we're moving forward with them now. So it's pretty exciting.
That's perfect. So you did the initial coin offering out of the regulated framework right away.
Well, they weren't quite set up with all of their framework, but they had written the draft framework. It hadn't made it through their. We were too early, essentially, for that. But
Okay.
we basically knew what was coming, and we worked with a lot of the professionals and attorneys here when we set that up. So we did it with that in mind, so that we could meet their requirements.
I can just applaud that. Yeah, I think it's a big step. You did it in time where like the regulatory framework was not even there yet,
Yeah.
and now the like regulators are stepping up to provide a legal framework that will come to like larger countries as well. But now regulators are looking at Gibraltar and Liechtenstein, especially. What really Liechtenstein sets apart is that they not only regulated one piece of the puzzle, like to do a token sale or an exchange, but rather they regulate the whole value chain of blockchains, from custody to identity service provider, or even price. Like, because if you would manipulate the price in exchange, everything would fall apart. So it's a key element of it, and
Yes.
having that controlled is ultimately giving security for all token holders, because they know you have a company over there. Like if there are any problems, they can basically go to court in Gibraltar. Same for us, they can go to Liechtenstein, and the laws there are securing the token holders' rights. So, and that's a big step, and gives security and credibility to your projects. That's great.
Yeah.
You also wrote an article, blog post called "No Hype" recently, but it got a lot of hype. So tell me what happened there.
Well, it's really interesting. We're still pre-release, right? We're still pre-launch on our platform. But we have been building for quite a while, and that's because we're building complex tech, innovative tech, things that have not been done before. And so we get a lot of feedback about why aren't we telling more people about our project? Why aren't we marketing more? We should do more to market our coin, especially. We've heard from a lot of folks. And I'll tell you, when I posted this article, I got the feedback directly from our community that it's not our hodlers that are telling us this; it's the day traders that are telling us this. So I'm going to say I said it wrong, and I'm going to correct it right now. The issue is that this is a big undertaking, right? And you don't spend your marketing budget until you're ready to have people come to something that they can sign up for. And that's not where we are. We're in our test phase. So we're communicating with our communities. We're giving them everything that they need. We're letting everybody know what we're doing every step of the way. And really, we're engaging. And it's been amazing because if you look across Holo and Holochain, we have hundreds of thousands, over 200,000 followers on social in our project at this point. And this is at a point where Holochain is now just coming into a full binary release with the latest version, and where Holo is still in alpha. And that is a pretty fantastic place to be as a startup. I think it sets us up for extremely rapid growth. And like I said earlier, where we're focused is on bringing in adoption, and adoption starts with developers who can build on our on Holochain. And then it's going to be adoption for projects and adoption for those end users of applications. So that's where we're focused. And it was really great. I had this moment where I was just like, I don't want to hear it anymore. And this article sort of like came out of me in 20 minutes almost, and then we just posted it out there, and it really was interesting calling it no hype and then having it be one of the biggest kind of articles that we've posted in a while. So a little bit ironic, but a lot of fun.
That's great to hear. So sometimes when you want to stay calm, not creating any hype, you're actually creating it. And I think it's good to hear that you're focusing on your product, building it out right away before you like wasting any money on marketing while it's not ready yet. And I think if you look at the growth of key technology companies in Silicon Valley, for example, they don't have any marketing budget. I mean, Airbnb started off with like nothing. Yeah. So it's really about building traction on the product and then growing step by step. And I think if you're following that strategy, you're already on the right track. But of course, I know the crypto community, they're always not patient. They're always screaming out like, what's launched like next day, tomorrow. But I think,
exciting.
Yeah, if you think back since you did the ICO until now, so much has changed.
Yeah.
You also sent me a short video about a chat demo, the Elemental chat demo. Can you tell me what this is all about? So I've opened up the video here so everybody can also view it it's on YouTube.
Yeah.
And let me just start this here, and you can tell me. So what is the Elemental chat?
So Elemental Chat is very simply a basic chat app. What you're seeing is a peer-to-peer application running across the world by people who are in Australia, New Zealand, Europe, and North America, chatting real time with fast response rates. This is what I was talking about earlier. Holochain is people talk about Holochain being something that compares to blockchain, but there is not, what you don't have with this is that mining process for each transaction. Each transaction gets signed by the two people who are engaged in the transaction first, and then it gets validated by the network that it's in, the DHT. So each Holochain application is its own network. Okay. So what you're seeing here is a peer-to-peer network running real time with multiple people chatting to each other in a channel. And it's this fast. And for us, this was showing the power of Holochain live. Until people could see it work, until they got their hands on it, until some of our community members could see, oh, you really can use Holochain for day-to-day applications that everybody needs. And with these apps, you own your own data. You don't have to be running over other people's networks. You don't have your messages being read on either side by someone, or you don't have another company that's in the middle of your chat application. This is what you're really doing. It's truly peer-to-peer.
Okay, I think that's a key point, because a lot of people might wonder, like, why another chat? Like, we have WhatsApp, we have Telegram, we have Discord. But I think the fundamental technology layer here is completely different. So just to point it out again, this is fully distributed, right? So
Absolutely.
it's fully peer-to-peer. There's no central entity storing the data. Is that correct?
The people who are storing the data are the people writing. This is in this particular example, it's our host community that is chatting. So each person who's in this network is a host. Each person has their own Holoport, and this app is running locally on their Holoport, and they are chatting with each other. They together share all of the data for this chat application. Basically, there are no servers. And that's what's super exciting right here. What the next step is that we're getting ready to release right now, that we're testing and finishing up some internal dev testing, is making this exact application available for all web users. So anybody could just go to a URL. They will be routed through into the distributed Holo network and then running a peer-to-peer chat application on that distributed network. It's there's no Amazon, there's no Microsoft in the middle, there's no third, there's no other group there running this. It's really fantastic. And this matters. I mean, longer term, what it means is that you have a choice. You can participate as somebody going through the Holo network, or you can be a node that is just running Holochain on any device locally for yourself. And you can still speak with everybody in that network.
But I think, like, looking at the application itself, that's revolutionary, because everybody had been dreaming about a decentralized social network. It could be really the next Facebook or the next Twitter or something like that, in a way.
It really is.
That's something you're launching as an own application from your company directly.
Well, this particular one, right? Okay, so that's a great question, and I'm really glad you asked that. So elemental chat is very elemental. It doesn't do all that much, and you'll see it had that banner up at the top. It said this is just a prototype app. It is a test application, and that's super important. We're not in the business of writing chat apps. We're in the business of writing the infrastructure and developing the hosting framework, the application framework, and also then the hosting platform for folks. But the chat app, this is as far as it's going to go. We're not going to add all the features that are necessary. We're not going to add all the bits of resilience that are really necessary for hundreds of thousands of users to be using this. That's for others to do, and others are doing it. There's several organizations already building on Holochain that are building social media applications, whether they're more like something like Facebook or more like something like WhatsApp or other types of things. But if you think about it, there are so many different types of communication applications in the world because there's that many types of human communication, right? We do want different features on these different apps for a purpose. And we expect there to be a whole lot of other applications emerging and bubbling up in the ecosystem around Holochain. So we're super excited about that.
How do you engage with the community and the developers itself? How do you incentivize that they're developing on Holo?
Well, right now we incentivize by building the products. We don't have a whole lot of we're not paying people to build anything. I mean, that's really what's so right now. We provide support. We are developing a core community of people who are making like the tutorials, and they're providing training. Like, our community is engaged in the way that open source communities engage, where what they're getting out of it is the value from being part of the community they receive from others. We are contributing to that community. We're helping facilitate a lot of those things. We're providing some of the tooling for those things. But really, this is an open source community of people coming in and learning how to build and teaching others how to build on Holochain. Along the way, there's going to be probably a lot of different types of ways that we facilitate organizations and projects and help them evolve, right? We give a lot of folks help with some of their architectural things. We offer architecture classes. We offer currency design workshops. We do a lot of things that support those who are trying to design their projects, and that will continue to evolve over time. A lot of what we're focused on right now is getting our documentation in place, getting our educational materials in place.
Okay, I understand. So basically, you're building up the framework before you go out and grow. But are there any additional plans in that regard to I see other projects doing grants or developing or having a commercial entity next to it, which is funded by the foundation, and then they're developing these kind of things. What's ahead there?
Well, I can't really speak to a lot of those things. They're not public. It's not public. None of these things have been announced at this stage. So I'm not, there are plans for it. We have different groups that, related. I don't know if you know the history of Holochain, but it came out of other projects, the Metacurrency project and and Scepter, which has become Coventina. And there are groups that are bubbling there that are looking at how to support communities who really want to create projects that are going to be transformational with this technology. But the details of this stuff is not public, and it's not ready to launch just yet. So it's coming, is what I'll say.
Okay, yeah, perfect. I think I just go through the questions here, and we'll be open up to questions very soon. So just as a reminder, we have the flip-flops up for grabs. So one pair of flip-flops for the best question. But I think I can already tell you it's the most active chat so far. There are hundreds of questions coming in. It's hard to filter out the serious and good ones. So that's why I want to ask one more question to you.
Sure.
So if you look at there's this mutual credit currency. Tell me what it is. Is it a cryptocurrency, or what is it all about?
Great. Absolutely. Well, of course it's a cryptocurrency, because that's the way you get security. That's the way you get validation. That's the way you make something really be scalable and sustainable. So Holofuel, and this is great. So I talked a few minutes ago when you did the intro, right when I started, about HOT, and that's our ERC20 token. It's what we did our initial community offering with. And then we have Holofuel, which is our internal currency for the Holo network. Mm-hmm. So when we go live, which is when we go into our beta release, that will basically be the initiation of the Holofuel currency. And Holofuel is not an ERC20 token. Holofuel is a Holochain-based mutual credit currency. So this means that there's a couple of differences about how Holofuel works compared to HOT. HOT is obviously a fixed supply based on the ERC20 token contract, and Holofuel is not, and that's because it's more of an accounting currency. It's built to be mutual credit, which means that if you spend a Holofuel, you're like if you're going up in one person's account, you're going down in another person's account. And so it's always going up and going down and coming to zero. So the way that works is that it's a mutual credit. So there are credit lines. Hosts will be the special, basically the special players on the network that have credit lines. And those are in addition to some of our major like reserve accounts that have credit lines as well. And that's what allows people to come in and go out and create basically the economy and the flow of Holofuel. Now, HOT will have a swap period where it's 1-to-1 into Holofuel, and that's going to be at the Holofuel reserve. It's the Holofuel HOT reserve, and that happens when we go live at beta. So it's a pretty different model than a lot of them. And so we get a lot of questions from our community about that. I spent some time in our meetup just a little while back, just last week, talking about this. And we're going to continue talking about it for, weeks and weeks to come.
Okay. So let's pick some questions. Yeah. So there's one from Prem Kumar, who says, will Holochain support hosting enterprise applications?
Well, I'm sure it will when the enterprise builds them. The thing is like I said earlier, every Holochain application is its own network. So if you're talking about an enterprise application that's used by a large organization for internal purposes, it's very easy to imagine, right? Mm-hmm. And it's also very easy to imagine another company building out and basically doing the development for those kinds of applications to support the installation and enablement of those enterprise types organizations to use them. The other thing about Holochain is that each application, you can bridge it. So it's not like when I say each application is its own network, it doesn't mean that they can't speak to another Holochain application or another network. It means that you can bridge those. So it's really ideal for uses like supply chain and other types of sort of like, I'm just going to say chains of connected enterprises, right? Because you can have different rules at different stages and you can see the value flow from one application into another, but they can all be bridged, and different users are different actors in each application with different rule sets. So we definitely see this going that direction. We've had a lot of interest from some larger organizations, but at this stage, since we weren't quite ready for them with Holochain, I don't know if you're familiar, but we've built it a few times, and this last version of it, well, not last, you are always building software, but Holochain RSM with the refactored state model is really, really ready now for organizations of that scale and size to start playing with it and start learning how to use its models.
There's one question in regard adoption. So from Gabor Korf, you talk about adoption. Is it not that marketing comes with adoption? What's your take on how to grow adoption?
Well, adoption for us starts with the open source developer community, because when I talk about adoption, I'm talking about having developers know how to build on it. The adoption of each application after that is what builds users and what builds customers on the Holo network. But developers have to be able to build. And so our first application is the Holochain framework, and then developers build applications on top of Holochain. So that's the starting point. I mean, this is everything builds on top of each piece, and developers are in the open source community, and they don't like being marketed to exactly. They want to know that this is a mutual experience, that they're giving and they're getting. That is a huge part of what makes an open source project work. It doesn't mean that you don't eventually do more growth in that space. You do, we will, and you have to be ready, because if you start doing a lot of marketing, but then you don't have enough of your materials ready, your install processes aren't ready for hundreds of thousands of people to be using them, then you'll get people frustrated with you. So each of these things comes at the right stage. We've got these things in our plans. It isn't that we're not going to market. It means that we're doing it at the right stage now. We're doing it to the right people in the right amounts for each stage of our growth.
Excellent answer. Yeah. So let's take another question. You can see there's one from Big Black Crypto who says, how could Holochain benefit an exchange such as LCX when it comes to expanding and meeting the demands of user needs? I think user needs in this regard is also market needs. Why is it important that you're listed at LCX Exchange?
That's really great. And this is a great opportunity for me maybe to turn the tables on you and ask you a couple questions. Right now, it's great. Exchanges are wonderful partners. They help put our hot token on them. It helps build the community of hot holders, and which is a huge stakeholder community for us. It's very important. But eventually, we're going to be converting into a whole different type of technology and a whole different type of currency. And when we first launch, we don't expect all of the exchanges to quite know what to do with that. I mean, to be honest, to run Holofuel, you're going to need to learn how to run a node and connect that in with a lot of other technology. So one of the things that we do is we engage with other exchanges to go, well, are you interested in also potentially in the future having Holochain on your exchange, Holofuel on your exchange? So this is something that will be important. Don't know if it's important for us today. Can't do it today, so it's not critical. But in some ways, it's what do you do when organizations come to you and they're not using standard, at this point, standard ERC20 or Ethereum or Bitcoin-based technologies? Do you work with any of those?
We do work, yeah. So we announced a lot of partnerships, and we came to Holo and Holochain by our community, and our community actually pushing us a lot in different directions. And we have engaged or announced also a couple of partnerships. but we just don't do partnerships out of thin air. So we first need to do additional talks and discuss. And I think there is an opportunity that also LCX might engage on Holochain development and work with you. But I mean, it's kind of the first couple of weeks that we decided to get you listed, hot token listed. So that was a community vote on Twitter, and you won by far with your strong community. And now we see it growing at LCX Exchange. But we have announced a couple of partnerships, and we deeply work with these projects together. So we, for example, just implemented the Celo Foundation's blockchain, which is fascinating in terms of payment networks. You know, the rival of Facebook's Libra or Diem Foundation now, pretty impressive setup on their technology. And then we did announce a partnership with Digibyte, also a top 100 project, and the team also based in Europe, pretty advanced in terms of what they are planning out. And there's some development going in the back end. And as soon as we can announce something, we'll tell you. But it's important. I think the partnerships are important because we're building this network. And for me, it's especially important because I'm from Europe. And I do see that this is the first time that innovation is really driven by the community in Europe, and not only out of Silicon Valley. It's basically distributed technology, and you can actually be distributed as a company or even as an entrepreneur as well. And I think that's pretty exciting. How's your team set up?
We are global and completely distributed, and we've been that way since the very beginning. We have been, we've been incorporated in Gibraltar, of course, but we have team members all over Europe. We have team members across parts of North America, Canada, and the US, but we also have folks in New Zealand and Australia. We have people everywhere, Eastern Europe. And we've had people in the past in South America and also in Africa. So we really love that aspect of doing business. It makes it, having, obviously I sound like I'm from North America. I've lived in the United States for a lot of years, but I'm also grew up in Spain as a young person, and I'm a dual citizen. And so I am sensitive sometimes to that North America centric attitude that comes along with innovative technology, the way that you're talking about it. And I think it's important. It's really important to recognize, because you're right, this innovation, a lot of the innovation around blockchain and around currency and around all the post-blockchain, which is where we like to put ourselves, is not all centered in the United States. It's not all centered in Silicon Valley. They're coming into this, but they're a little late in the game in some ways. They're coming into it both from a VC perspective and from a technology perspective, not at the front end of it, not doing the R&D in the earliest days. It came out of other areas. Some of it, certainly our roots are from technical co-founders that were in the US. But they reached out globally immediately when we started building, and they got on the road, and we did a lot of our early hackathons were in Europe. We got huge response in places like Amsterdam and places like Turkey. We also did hackathons in India. We've really had a global presence from the beginning, and that, we think, is one of the things that makes it, makes the wider adoption for distributed technology something so possible and so real.
Yes, and I see that there's a lot of uncertainty in the US market still with regulations, and of course it's hard that they kind of come up with solutions. So that's why Europe really stands out with coming up with a regulatory framework, but also with an exciting community. You know, in Crypto Valley, in Liechtenstein, as well as in Zug, in Switzerland, there are over more than 1,000 companies, blockchain-related companies. Ethereum, Tezos are headquartered over here, and actually you can see the people on the street. So there's the actual community also here. So I think very exciting moment for digital Europe to grow, and we should not lose power and speed on this, but keep focusing, as we're in the middle of two powers with the Asian strong Asian markets, and then the strong I think technology innovation of the US. as well. And so that will be exciting to see how it plays out. Here's another question from Nigel. What is the best thing we can do to, as individuals, to help Holo? Purchase hot, buy a Holo port, or do something else?
Right. Well, it's a great question. There's a lot of different ways that people do engage with us. Obviously, we have hot holders. Those are a great group of our stakeholders that are doing that. It's very much a support for the organization for the future. Holoports. Well, I'd say buy one, but we don't have any available right this moment. So that's not a great thing to do. But this will be something that changes. I noticed there was another question about Holoports as well. I'm just going to take a second to sort of answer that. I saw it fly in through the chat earlier. And that was a question about whether Holoports are just for something that people have to purchase, or whether or not it's something that can be available for people who have their own hardware. And right now, at this stage for the organization, it is something that is purchased. And that's really important for us because it allows us to keep our support during our alpha test kind of minimized to a very much a piece of hardware that we know works a particular way. So as we're rolling it out and growing this, we're testing something that's understood and well known. We already have the ability to install Holoport software on other devices. We've got it built for our Nano device, which is going to be the small Banana Pi device that we haven't shipped yet. But we also have it available to build out on cloud ports and other local devices. But that's not going to be made available to everybody until after our beta release. And that's because we want to also support our community who pre-purchased Holoports, who showed their support from the get-go. Because some of these folks bought a Holoport going on 2 years ago, and some of them bought a Holoport this year. And so we're seeing a continued interest in that, and we want to make sure that those folks who buy it before our launch get that benefit. And they're going to be able to get that benefit, in alpha and in beta.
Okay. Alpha and in beta. And I see that there's a passionate community here with like a strong Turkish community as well. Like, why is that? Did you do some more activities over there in the region?
We did early on. We did some hackathons there back in 2018. But I also think that there's just a love of crypto and a love of projects that really make having some ownership of your data, having identity, be self-sovereign. I think those things just really matter for that community. And, I think maybe we'll see a few people let us know exactly why it matters so much on the chat beyond that.
Yes, yeah. Just looking into grabbing another question here. So I think let's take another one. First of all, we got most comments, I think, as on any chat we've done before.
It's hard to read them all.
Already like pinging up, you've reached over capacity here in terms of the chat. And a lot of questions are going into this marketing angle, but I think we already discussed this already. And then I just see like love, Holo, I love you, Mary. You're doing a great job. Here, I will hold Holo until I can hand it over to my grandkids. So a lot of people who are really believing in you.
I saw a question about a hackathon there. Let's see. I could answer that one. That would be a good one. COVID put a crimp in our event strategy this last year. We're a little quiet when we were building, but we probably wouldn't have been this quiet in terms of getting out in the world and doing events. We've done a lot of educational events that are online, and we're going to continue doing that. We've got a dev camp that's going to come out sometime this summer, and that's one of our community online development training events. But we haven't kickstarted hackathons again yet, but we will be doing that as well, because hackathons were hugely beneficial both to the external community in building support, building awareness, and also getting communities, local communities, working together on Holochain applications. So we're definitely going to be doing that again, but we don't have a date yet when those are going to kickstart. I saw somebody asking about one in the UK. Do you know, if you're really interested in starting one, as things begin changing in your local communities, we have an events group that can support that. It's events@holochain.org.
Okay, that's great. So you're incentivizing to do these community outlets, whether virtual or physical, at the moment. That's great to hear. And then there's another question here, again from Big Black Crypto. Will we see a Holo and a Holofuel pair at some point?
Well, we're basically, Holofuel is the utility token, and we don't have any plans for doing a security-based token. But part of why HOT hasn't been on U.S. exchanges is because of that whole regulatory. How does a token get defined? And so we're still working through some of those questions, but it's not our intention to do an equity or a security-based token exactly. What we're looking for is having HOT and Holofuel both be seen as utilities or something to that effect.
Okay. And then there was one, I think, particular interesting question around our partnership. So, I mean, we just started out with the listing of Holo and HOT token at LCX Exchange. And so the partnership here is just getting like to be discussed. I think now we're focusing on getting the trading pair out, and I can just encourage everybody to sign up at exchange.lcx.com. That's our exchange platform as a centralized spot exchange where you can trade HOT tokens. So currently we have HOT LCX and HOT BTC as a key trading pair. But here we already saw the kind of the growth of new signups coming, especially also from Turkey. And I think if you look at the other exchanges where you are listed, we're a fully regulated exchange, so giving a lot of security also
Yeah, we're
to
really
the
appreciative
community.
of that.
Mary, can you also give us some insights about how big is the company at the moment? How many developers are there? How many people you have in the in the marketing team, communication team, and how do you manage it now in this kind of tough times of COVID and decentralized kind of company running? Yeah.
Right. Well, we're actually growing again right now. We've got there's a big difference between our internal team, but we've sort of got a core internal team, and then we have a lot of other folks that work with us for us in a sort of a little bit larger circle, and then we have core community volunteers. Like I said, as an open source project, it can expand very quickly. Internally, we have just around 30 people working for us. The vast majority of course, are in our development teams and in our delivery teams. And then we have about 4 people on our marketing team, but then also additional event community support teams as well. So we're split up in a lot of different functions to operate in this way. And we're growing right now. We're hiring folks both in our technical and in our non-technical spaces. So there's information up at holo.host/careers if anybody's interested.
Excellent. And now, like looking at the company growth, you said you're hiring, you're growing. What are in terms of your roadmap, your big milestones of 2021?
Well, we're coming up on one of the biggest ones really very soon. We don't tend to give dates when the things are going to be ready. We work in a very agile development environment, but we make announcements once they get through to a community test space as to when they're going. But we do have a roadmap, and that's up on our website. The next milestone on the roadmap is the hosted HAPS, kind of the elemental chat working for web users. And like I said, we're in test right now on that. We're very close. We've been working on a couple of resilience issues to make sure that we're ready for this to go out to more than just the 400 current nodes that are on our testnet right now. So that's one big thing that's going to be coming out. But right on the heels of that, actually with that, we have an expansion of our host console so that hosts will not only be able to run Elemental Chat themselves and host, but they'll be able to see the activity, the hosting activity that's happening for Elemental Chat on their device. They'll be able to log in and see basically how much bandwidth, how much storage, how much compute is being used on their port. So that's a real exciting kind of second step that's happening now simultaneously. Mm-hmm. And soon after that, we'll be getting Holofuel, the application, not the currency, but Holofuel, the application, in a test experience for folks. So those are some of the next ones that are on the roadmap. There's actually a lot more on the roadmap between now and the end of 2021, because we're pushing forth all of the applications that make up the Holo platform this year, and so there's more than there's the host console, there's the publisher portal, and there's Holofuel, all our main portions of that. So it's a very exciting year for us.
So it seems like 2021 will be the year where you take the vision into reality and really turning it from like years of development into something growing and stable. That's exciting.
Yeah, 2021 is exciting for us.
And I also there are hundreds of questions coming in on token burn, on hot and Holochain's utility token. Can you just walk us through quickly through the token economics and like where does stand? How many tokens are in circulation? How many are there? And what's the plan?
Sure. We have a lot of tokens in circulation. I don't have the number in front of me. There's 177 billion tokens that were minted. When people talk about the burn, I think they're looking at those numbers and they're looking for how can I just get my value up fast now. That's not something we're doing. It's not built into our project. Our green paper outlines our plans for our token and for our swap into Holofuel. And that's really not the approach that we're taking. So that's I understand it gets asked. We're not doing that particular tactic. So I'm not sure what else to say about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that's very important to understand. You're building a product. You're not like pushing the token to get like a pump and dump schemes or anything like that, but really building something sustainable. And that's also something which is important to us. So the community did the community vote, but after that, we now have a crypto analyst team who are actually doing research diligence on the project. Also on your project, we also require legal opinions on the token so that it's not a security. It's something which we are not allowed to trade at this point of time. While I have to note it's planned. So, and we're filing for additional licenses. But in general, I think the kind of fundamental layer of a solid company, a proper team, and then a proper technology is something which is essential for every token holder to evaluate. But even more important, I think, than buying the tokens is really engaging with in your network. When you look at the Element Chat, will the token have a functionality there as well?
No, there's the thing about Holochain applications is they don't require any token transaction to happen in the play of an application. That's actually what distinguishes Holochain so much from other protocols. It doesn't require that. It actually is so efficient that people can just run it. They don't need the miners creating the perspective the way that it's required on blockchain to get validation. We don't have the same mechanisms for validation that a blockchain does. And that's what allows it to be so much more efficient. So the architecture of Holochain is distinctive. And I think that for a lot of folks that get behind our project, what they've done is they've read the white paper. They understand that, getting to consistency is critical for all peer-to-peer applications, but you don't have to go about it the same way. And so by doing it in the way that Holochain does, you can literally have the type of speed and efficiency that doesn't require a token to be built into the protocol from the get-go.
Okay. One more question here from Brooks. Which third-party Holochain applications are you most excited about, Mary?
Oh, well, I think at this point, I'd have to say RedGrid. RedGrid's an energy project that's in Australia that is building on Holochain. And part of what makes them so exciting is that not only are they using Holochain for ensuring that they can support a peer-to-peer energy network, but they're also building another currency on top of Holochain, another like-minded currency similar to Holofuel with their project. And so what we've said all along is that currencies built on Holochain can be asset-backed, can actually reflect the carrying capacity of their networks. And so to see somebody like this who's got the backing in the educational and in the business communities locally in Australia, pulling this together and bringing this into reality is super exciting. So that's probably top of mind for me right now and one of my favorites.
And does your operation, is it in any way affected by the coronavirus? So Volkan is asking that.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, every place was affected to some degree by the coronavirus, right? It changed how we work together. For us, because we were already remote and because we were already global, we had a little bit of an advantage, I'd say. We didn't have to learn how to do business again together. We just had to stay put. And for some, that meant staying put in places they may not have wanted to have been to stay for a while, but that's a little bit what happened for a lot of folks out there. In some ways, it had us focus better. I think that 2020 was a good year for us in terms of getting down to working solidly together and just staying put and building out the product and the infrastructure and getting the testing done in a solid way that we needed to do. And so that was really great. I wouldn't want to do it that way again. This was not a simple year for a lot of folks. And of course, folks were struggling with it, with just the energy of being stuck. I was on the rock. I didn't leave Gibraltar for a long, long time. And it's a very small place to be. But it's also great because it's a small community that really addressed the situation well. And so in some ways, it was a benefit also to be here during this period of time. So
yeah, so you mentioned you had been on the rock all the time. So you have to explain, what does it mean?
Yeah, well, Gibraltar is a very small, like Liechtenstein, we're a very small entity, a small space and a small place. And it's the Rock of Gibraltar, which is a rock in the Mediterranean at the southern tip of Spain. And it's Gibraltar is a UK territory. It's its own, got its own legislation, its own government here. And that's why, like Liechtenstein, it can be agile and create really great business environment. So it's exciting to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think you're in the right spot. I have to tell that I'm a little bit. Sometimes when I look out of the window, I would love to have more sun. So that's something which is missing in Liechtenstein. But of course, the Liechtenstein jurisdiction also very interesting because it's right next to Switzerland, has access to European Economic Area and Switzerland. So it's kind of a hybrid model. And I think it's great that smaller jurisdictions are now standing out and creating these legal frameworks and helping companies to grow, whether it's Holo in Gibraltar or LCX here in Liechtenstein. That's what matters, because we want to build exciting businesses, as you are doing as well. And we don't want to wait until legislators come up. Do you also engage with regulators over there?
We are in the process. So yes, absolutely. That's one of the reason we selected to be in Gibraltar was because of their regulatory framework, and we're currently going through that process. As an organization that hasn't gone live yet or isn't quite at the point of launching, who's in our test, we needed to be at a certain point to have all of our processes in place, defined, documented, and ready to go. And that's where we are. So we're engaging now, and we expect to be so, but there's still work to be done.
And what's your view on this, like whole GDPR and data privacy discussion in Europe? I mean, when apps are generated or like developed on Holochain and there's fully decentralized apps, then it's hard to do any control. I mean, that's the a key benefit. Also, I mean, Twitter can just basically censor even the president or the former president. In decentralized social networks, it would not be possible. Content would be pushed out, or like, is it possible? And what's your take on all this discussion if you're doing a storage platform and data privacy or even copyrights? Is that a topic?
A lot of these things are topics, but it all depends on how the applications are written, right? We talk about censorship not happening, but is censorship happening because of the rules that people come together and agree upon? Or is it happening because somebody else made the rules for you and you have no other choice? Well, the part of the problem with big companies, big data, all of us on the same network is that we are playing by the rules of a single business in some of these situations. And that's really the issue. So when you start talking about distributed, think of it more like, well, my network might be just the group of people that I'm connected with. Those are the people that I allow in, and we play by a set of rules that we agree to, right? And so it's whether or not you let people in is still part of the game. Whether or not you want them in, that's still part of the thing. So I think the world talks about censorship in weird ways, because even distributed, even just in face-to-face meetings, you get to choose who you're having conversations with, right? And you can walk away from conversations that you don't want to be in. And so with Holochain, we're really looking at how do people build apps that can mimic the way people interact in real life. And so rules will be able to be made, but they'll be written into the rules in the same way that rules are written into smart contracts, right? And it's just the matter of that a platform isn't basically saying that, hey, come online. Oh, it's free. Oh, and by the way, we now have everything about you and everything that you've ever written, and we require all of your information. And we are now the owners of all of your information and controllers of all of your data. That's the big difference, right? And so in terms of GDPR and some of those initiatives that have started in Europe and elsewhere, I think there's a real key message here, and that's that people are tired of having large centralized organizations be the ones making the rules about all of our data, and that they're ready for a change there. And it's going to come as a matter of regulatory law, and it's going to come as a matter of technology and innovation. And right now, we're taking both of those routes, essentially, because with Holochain, we're talking about taking the route that's all technology and all distributed and peer-to-peer. But with Holo, we know that we've got to meet the world where it is today, and that some of this information is going out through networks and platforms that connect with the current internet that is regulated and that is centralized to some degree. And so we're doing both. And people over time will have the option to move from one to the other. And that's pretty exciting, we think.
That's very exciting. It's about change. It's about creating the future of the internet. And I just want to recap a little bit here. So in general, like we had been talking about how decentralized storage will reinvent cloud computing. So I'm now much smarter on what Holochain does. You're building this future of cloud computing. And as you said, your Holochain does to cloud computing what Airbnb did to hotels. It's kind of a distributed, exciting network which is grown with fundamentals which are pretty strong. So I see a very strong community as a fundamental. I see a very strong product and technology as a fundamental, and I see your team as a strong leadership team as another fundamental. Very exciting to see that growing. And then if you take a couple of steps back here, I mean, we have seen the emergence of Bitcoin. There was the white paper, the famous white paper from Satoshi Nakamoto, talking about the peer-to-peer cash system. But and now we've seen a growth of like speculation about Bitcoin, new stable coins emerge in other kind of second Bitcoin Cash, and now there's smart contract platforms. Ethereum's had been building up, but it had been all around centered around this cryptocurrency idea.
Right,
And
finance.
we've now at the tipping point where like nobody could imagine that this white paper talking about blockchain and peer-to-peer cash systems is triggering this wave of innovation for blockchain and distributed ledger technology, what you're building here in terms of creating a Web3. And so I really do see that we had the internet of information in the past, and now there's the internet of value. And what you are doing is merging both together in a way, like having this internet of information with data storage and everything created on top of what we do see out there. And therefore, I can really say, as a former venture investor and also futurist, that this is something which is here to stay. It will stay in the market. It's one of the big innovation fields, and I do see that Holo is one of the key partners there, or key companies driving that change. But now back to you, Mary. What do you see in terms of the key trends when you look at the industry in terms of products and in the industry as a whole?
Well, I think one of the big shifts in cloud computing has been, well, it's probably more related to architecture of applications, which is more service-driven and modularization. And this has been happening for a while, but I think it's hit cloud computing in a way, and also the distributed nature of it has been growing, as you see with organizations like Cloudflare that really are doing a combination of both of those things, providing a lot of service-driven work and going much more distributed than some of the larger organizations like AWS or Azure and that sort of thing. So to kind of talk about it in the cloud computing space, I think that we are sort of a next generation of that, really taking cloud computing out further in the distributed space. When we launch, well, even already in our alpha, we've had far more nodes doing cloud computing on their holoports than there are nodes in an organization like Cloudflare, than there are data centers in an organization like Cloudflare. And that's pretty exciting. And that's just this is just at the very beginning, pre-launch. So that, I think, is one trend that's going to continue happening in the cloud space. I think that there's a few other areas, and that's especially when it comes down to distributed analytics. That's going to become huge. It doesn't, just because big data may shift because more peer-to-peer application technology becomes enabled, it doesn't mean that data goes away, and it doesn't mean that data is less important. People still are going to need to crunch data. There's massive needs. And in fact, it might even become a little bit more complex when we start trying to get the data out, from more distributed sources. And I think that's important. It's going to give agency to the end users about when they want their data included and when they won't. At least with Holochain, that's one of the key drivers, right? You don't have to make your data available to every part of the network. Only within the network that you choose do you have to make it available. But I think that data analytics overall, I think we're at the very early stages of that. And then you mix on top of that AI and IoT devices with a distributed network, and you just have an incredible opportunity for expansion and services and new technologies and innovation. So that's what I see on the outlying edges of this, and I'm excited about all of it.
And it is exciting. And you had been mentioning Cloudflare. I once had a chance to meet Michelle at a meeting from the World Economic Forum in India, and she told me that it was not an overnight success. People are looking at that, and basically for them, it was 10 years in the making. So Cloudflare is very strong now, and like one of the key tech players, of course, and really driving the infrastructure. But imagine it took 10 years to build it. Just to round up this session, I think it was very lively with all the questions coming in. Thanks. And we'll pick somebody who gets sent over our nice flip-flops. And so that was super exciting to see such an active community here today. As an entrepreneur, you always wake up at night sometimes with an idea, with fears, with sometimes things which keep you up at night. So there was one question from MR: what is your biggest fear for not being a successful platform? Let's rephrase it. I would say, like, what keeps you up at night?
Well, what's interesting is what keeps me up at night. Last night, thinking about our website, but it varies. I think this is a critical place about strategy, right? And strategy and risk. In each stage, it's different things. Last year, it was product development and product architecture. And this year, the questions that people are asking about adoption and marketing, those are the right ones, because we've shifted gears and we're moving into a time where what we have to be able to do is to educate and to get awareness raised with developers. So what keeps me up at night is understanding how developers think, understanding what it is that they need to learn and to adopt new tech. Because all of this that you were just talking about, companies that it takes a while to learn. Well, it does. It takes a long time to build, but that's also because everybody that's starting to use a new innovative technology, they're going across a barrier, and that's a learning barrier. And so a learning company is what we need to be, and we need to keep learning about what our stakeholders need for adoption so that we can keep providing it better and faster to them.
I think with these words, we end up this exciting LCX Insights live session. It was a pleasure getting to know you, talking about all this project. I really, really appreciate taking the time on this Sunday evening. And thanks to the community. And yeah, onwards and upwards. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much for having me.
This is LCX Insights Live. For more insights, please visit lcx.com/insights and follow us on Twitter @LCX. Onward.